Hello, my dear English learners, and welcome back to Daily English Learn. I'm Eva, and sitting right here with me is my wonderful co-host, Mark. Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, Eva. And honestly, I'm really excited about today's topic because I think this is something that frustrates so many learners out there.
Absolutely. Before we jump in, I want to ask you something. Have you ever studied English grammar for hours, memorized 20 new words, practiced your pronunciation, and then the next day, when someone asks you a simple question in English, your mind just goes blank? You freeze, you forget everything. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, completely. And I think this happens to almost every single learner at some point. You work so hard, you feel prepared, but when the moment comes to actually speak, it's like your brain shuts down.
Exactly. And that's the problem we're solving today. Because here's the thing. Most people are learning English the hard way. They're forcing their brain to remember things instead of letting their brain learn naturally. And that's why everything disappears when you need it most.
Right. So today, we're going to talk about something that might sound a little strange at first, but trust me, it works. We're going to show you how to train your brain to speak English without thinking, without translating, without stopping to ask yourself if your grammar is correct.
We call this the autopilot method. And by the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly how to use it, why it works, and how you can start practicing it today, right now, in your own life.
So, if you've been struggling to speak English smoothly, if you feel stuck even after months or years of study, this episode is going to change the way you think about learning. Let's get started.
Okay, so let me start with the question. Mark, when you speak your native language, do you think about grammar?
Not at all. I just talk. The words come out on their own.
Exactly. And that's because your brain has learned your native language on autopilot. You don't plan your sentences, you don't translate, you don't stop and think, okay, should I use present tense or past tense here? You just speak and it flows naturally.
Right, and that's the big difference. When you speak your first language, your brain is working automatically. But when you speak English, you're thinking too much. You're trying to control every word, every sentence, and that's why it feels so difficult.
Yes, and here's what most teachers don't tell you. You can learn English the same way you learned your first language. You can train your brain to speak English automatically, without thinking, without translating, without struggling. And the secret is this. You have to stop studying English like a textbook subject and start experiencing English like a real language.
Okay, so let's break that down. What does it mean to experience English instead of just studying it?
Great question. So when you study English, you're focusing on rules. You're memorizing grammar tables. You're learning lists of vocabulary. You're doing exercises in a book. And all of that is conscious learning. Your brain is working hard, thinking, analyzing, trying to remember.
And that's useful, right? I mean, you do need to understand some grammar.
Yes, of course, grammar is important, but here's the problem. If you only study grammar, you'll know the rules, but you won't be able to use them in real conversations. Because in a real conversation, you don't have time to think about rules. You need to speak quickly, naturally, automatically.
So that's where the autopilot method comes in.
Exactly. The autopilot method is about building unconscious knowledge. It's about training your brain to recognize English patterns without thinking about them. And the way you do that is through massive input and natural repetition.
Okay, so let's explain that in simple terms. What do you mean by massive input?
Massive input means you need to hear and read English every single day, not just for 10 minutes, not just when you're studying, but throughout your day, while you're cooking breakfast, while you're traveling to work, while you're exercising, while you're relaxing at night. You need to surround yourself with English so much that your brain starts to absorb it automatically.
So it's like bathing your brain in English.
Yes, exactly. And here's the key. You're not listening to learn, you're listening to enjoy. You're not trying to memorize anything, you're just letting the language flow into your brain. And slowly, without you even realizing it, your brain starts to notice patterns. It starts to understand how English works. And one day, you'll be speaking, and a sentence will just come out perfectly, and you won't even know how you knew it.
That's amazing. And I think a lot of people don't realize that this is actually how children learn their first language.
Absolutely. Think about it. When a baby is born, nobody teaches them grammar. Nobody gives them a vocabulary list. The baby just listens. For the first year or two, the baby doesn't speak at all. They just listen and listen and listen. And then one day, they start speaking, and the sentences they use are correct, even though nobody taught them the rules.
So the baby's brain learned the language automatically by hearing it over and over again.
Exactly. And that's what we want to do with English. We want to give our brain so much exposure to English that it learns the patterns on its own. And when that happens, speaking becomes effortless.
Okay, so let's talk about how to actually do this. Because I think some people might be thinking, okay, this sounds good, but what do I listen to? How much time do I need? Where do I even start?
Good questions. So first, let's talk about what to listen to. The most important thing is this. Listen to things you actually enjoy. Don't force yourself to listen to boring English lessons if you don't like them. Instead, find English content that you love. Maybe you love cooking, so watch English cooking shows. Maybe you love sports, so listen to English sports podcasts. Maybe you love movies, so watch English movies with English subtitles.
So the idea is to make English a natural part of your daily life, not something you do because you have to.
Exactly. Because if you enjoy what you're listening to, you'll keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more your brain learns. But if you force yourself to listen to something boring, you'll stop after a few days, and you won't make any progress.
That makes so much sense. And I think this is where a lot of learners make a mistake. They think learning English has to be serious and difficult, but actually, it should be fun.
Absolutely. And here's another important point. You don't need to understand everything you hear. In fact, it's okay if you only understand 50% or even 30% at first, because your brain is still learning from the parts you don't understand. Your brain is picking up the rhythm, the intonation, the sounds, the patterns, and over time, your understanding will grow naturally.
So it's like planting a seed. You water it every day, and one day it grows into a tree.
Perfect example. And that's why consistency is so important. It's better to listen to English for 20 minutes every single day than to listen for 3 hours once a week, because your brain needs regular exposure to build those automatic patterns. Now, let's talk about the second part of the autopilot method, and that's using what you learn in real situations. Because listening is important, but speaking is where the magic happens.
Right. So once you've been listening to English for a while, your brain has absorbed a lot of language, but now you need to activate it. You need to use it.
Exactly. And here's the key. You don't need to practice with perfect sentences. You don't need to worry about making mistakes. You just need to speak. Try to have conversations in English as much as possible. Talk to yourself in English. Describe what you're doing. If you're making tea, say out loud, "I'm boiling water. I'm putting the tea bag in the cup. I'm adding milk and sugar." This might feel strange at first, but it's incredibly powerful.
And the reason it's powerful is because you're training your brain to think in English instead of translating from your native language.
Exactly. And over time, this becomes automatic. You'll stop translating. You'll start thinking in English directly. And when that happens, your speaking becomes fast, natural, and confident.
So let me give you a real example. When I was learning Spanish, I used to translate everything in my head. Someone would ask me a question in Spanish, and I would translate it to English, think of the answer in English, and then translate it back to Spanish. And by the time I finished, the conversation had moved on.
Yes, that's so common. And that's because you were using conscious learning. You were thinking too much.
Exactly. But then I started using the autopilot method. I listened to Spanish podcasts every day. I watched Spanish TV shows. I talked to myself in Spanish. And after a few months, something amazing happened. Someone asked me a question in Spanish, and I answered immediately, without thinking. The words just came out. I didn't translate. I just spoke. And that was the moment I realized I was finally learning the language the right way.
That's such a perfect example. And that's what we want for everyone learning English. We want you to reach that moment where English just flows out of you naturally. So let's give some practical examples of how to practice the autopilot method in daily life.
Great idea. So first, let's talk about listening. Here are some simple ways to get massive English input every single day. Number 1, change the language on your phone to English. This forces you to see and read English constantly. Number 2, listen to English podcasts while you're commuting or doing chores. You can listen to this podcast, Daily English Learn, or any other English podcast you enjoy. Number 3, watch English YouTube videos about topics you love. Maybe you love fitness, so watch fitness videos in English. Maybe you love travel, so watch travel vlogs in English.
And remember, the goal is not to study. The goal is to enjoy the content and let your brain absorb the language naturally.
Exactly. Now let's talk about speaking practice. Here are some easy ways to start speaking English every day. Number 1, talk to yourself in English. Describe your day. Say things like, I woke up at 7. I brushed my teeth. I had breakfast. I'm feeling good today. This helps your brain start thinking in English.
And it doesn't matter if you make mistakes because nobody is listening. You're just practicing the flow of speaking.
Exactly. Number 2, record yourself speaking English. You can talk about your day, or you can retell a story you heard in a podcast. Then listen to your recording and notice which words or sentences feel difficult. Practice those parts again until they feel smooth.
That's a great tip. And number 3, find a language partner or join an English conversation group online. There are so many free apps and websites where you can practice speaking with other learners or even native speakers.
Yes, and the more you speak, the more confident you become. And confidence is everything when it comes to learning a language. So let's talk about something important. I think some people might be worried that if they don't study grammar, they'll make a lot of mistakes and never improve.
That's a great point. And yes, you will make mistakes. But here's the truth. Mistakes are not the enemy. Mistakes are how you learn. When you make a mistake and someone corrects you, your brain remembers that correction much better than if you just read it in a grammar book.
Absolutely. And actually, native English speakers make mistakes all the time. We don't speak perfectly. We use slang, we break grammar rules, we use informal language, and that's totally normal.
Exactly. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. The goal is not to speak perfect English. The goal is to communicate clearly and confidently. And the only way to build that confidence is by speaking, even if you're not perfect.
And here's another important thing. The autopilot method doesn't mean you should never study grammar. Grammar is useful, especially when you're trying to understand why something works a certain way. But grammar should be a tool you use occasionally, not the main focus of your learning.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Grammar is like the instruction manual for a car. It's helpful to read it once in a while, but you don't need to read the manual every time you drive. Most of the time, you just get in the car and drive because your brain already knows what to do.
That's a perfect analogy, and that's what we want for your English. We want it to become so automatic that you don't need to think about the rules. You just speak.
All right, so let's quickly review everything we've talked about today because I want to make sure you leave this episode with a clear action plan.
Good idea. So first, we explained that most people struggle with English because they're using conscious learning, which means they're thinking too much, translating, worrying about grammar, and that makes speaking feel slow and difficult.
Right. Then we introduced the autopilot method, which is about building unconscious knowledge by surrounding yourself with English every single day. You do this through massive input, which means listening to and reading English content you actually enjoy.
And then you activate that knowledge by speaking as much as possible, even if you make mistakes. You talk to yourself, record yourself, join conversation groups, and practice thinking in English instead of translating.
And over time, your brain learns English patterns automatically, and speaking becomes natural, fast, and confident, just like when you speak your native language.
So here's your homework. Starting today, find one English podcast, YouTube channel, or TV show that you really enjoy and listen to it for at least 20 minutes every day. And while you're listening, don't try to memorize anything. Just enjoy it and let your brain absorb the language.
And second, start talking to yourself in English for just 5 minutes every day. Describe what you're doing, what you see, how you feel. It might feel strange at first, but trust the process. This is how you train your brain to think in English.
And remember, this is not a quick fix. Learning a language takes time. But if you stay consistent with the autopilot method, I promise you, in a few months, you'll look back and be amazed at how much you've improved.
All right, my dear learners, that's it for today's episode of Daily English Learn. I really hope this was helpful and that you feel motivated to try the autopilot method in your own learning journey.
Yes, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends who are also learning English. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new lesson.
Thank you so much for listening. And remember, learning English is not about being perfect. It's about being confident. It's about enjoying the process. And it's about never giving up.
Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. We believe in you.
See you in the next episode. Take care and happy learning.
Goodbye, everyone.